Fist of the Forgotten devlog, the other half of June through August 2020. I've started introducing some radial color gradients into the fog shader. Thanks to a Godot engine modification from Fire, I'm able to import common shader elements so I don't have to copy-paste the same code into 20 different shaders. I started on a new music track. It's first pass and incomplete, but might as well have a listen while we look at other things. I modified the importer in the engine to optionally import at the frame rate exported from Blender instead of a fixed frame rate. I've iterated on the run animation, added some sounds for rain and thunder, and created new trees for the background. There's now a skidding turnaround animation if you change directions while you've got some momentum, complete with sparks and scraping sounds if you've got the fist. Since the ramp jumping mechanic wasn't entirely clear, I added an interaction sequence to let players create a ramp so that they could learn the importance of ramps without explicit tutorials. I added other interaction animations as well, and the ability to switch between different level exits. Hey, bonus reuse to replace that invisible trigger I had before. Had to fix some crashes and bugs now that you can reset at any time, on levels that you previously could not die on. I've had a lot of physics issues with moving platforms going through the player, causing the player to jitter or not be considered on the ground, but I think I've got them all straightened out now, even at extreme velocities. Added some kill triggers in case players do things that would get them stuck inside of collision that changes. Redid the hands on the cinematic character mesh to make him look a little more like a child's, and made some major changes to the rig, including subdividing the forearm into multiple bones so that when the hand rotates, the forearm doesn't get all twisted and distorted. I've made a lot of improvements to the water. There's now a heavily subdivided mesh that follows the camera, allowing us to use a texture to displace the vertices and make three-dimensional waves. I also render some simple geometry to a viewport texture, allowing us to have a cheap reflection. Oh, and there's splash effects too. Added some checks to make sure you couldn't jump while you're crouched under something. Made tweaks to a number of levels based on feedback. Started on another photograph of the main character and her siblings, and created a 3D version of their home for reference. I'm also continuing my quest to draw 1,000 faces. These are just studies of other works and photographs for practice purposes. The frame rate display is now more accurate. The Spiderbot boss is slowly becoming more functional and can fire lasers and missiles, and flashes when it takes damage. The first boss now has a boot up sequence. I've improved the visuals in the background and made a number of other level tweaks as well. I made a collapse animation with Bones copying the positions of physics objects in Blender and using a physics simulation to derive the collapse. I grabbed an engine tweak that lets me scale the time on all shaders so that I don't have to manually update the materials if I want them to be able to pause when the game pauses. If you load a level to practice on, the game will make sure you have the correct abilities unlocked in order to be able to complete the level. There's also an option to loop the level if you want to keep running it over and over again to improve your speedruns. I'm in the early stages of blocking out a level that will have a bunch of heavy machinery, hopefully creating the percussion element of the background music. I hope to have a melody that progresses as you move through the level. And speaking of melodies, here's another track that I'm working on. I've started working on a new enemy that instead of killing you directly will fling you, possibly directly into a hazard you just escaped, or you might be able to use it to your advantage as well. I've iterated on the log loader a little bit, replacing the physics-driven claws with something that's a little more predictable. Worked on some more Steam achievements and badges. Unsatisfied with the bullet physics engine collision detection, I've been writing my own from scratch. I've added a camera trigger to pan down so players know where it's safe to jump. I've also extended this level significantly to give the players more room to learn the mechanics and added some more secret areas. I mapped out a high-level overview of the project to get a better estimate of what my progress was on the content, and it's still, as suspected, around 20%. Iterated on the levels that take place in the mountains, set up triggers for doors so that they can be toggled open and closed. Prototype crane rotation for more dynamic levels. The X button now attacks by default. Of course, that's completely customizable. And there's a slider to adjust the controller rumble intensity. Fix some things not properly saving their status if you quit the game and then reload your save. Created a high detail version of the fist for 3D printing. Not too bad for my first ever 3D printed model. I managed to get another level rendering to a viewport texture placed on monitors, for reasons. Added functionality to my Twitch bot to update a contributor spreadsheet directly from Twitch chat. I'd like to have some sort of interactive credits level where enemies show up with the names of people that have contributed. A rough first pass at some trees for the opening cinematic. I haven't quite dialed in the style I'm going to use for that yet. I added little dangly roots and leaves to my vine generator. Added some more effects to the charge attack. This turret thing now aims. Rotational math is way more difficult than it should be. I made some tweaks to reduce the gravity when the character's on the ground because it used to feel really slow accelerating up slopes. Chibi-style sticker design. More localization. You can no longer wall jump off of hazards. Fixed an issue with the physics importing that resulted in a whole bunch of duplicate vertices. I don't know if that was causing any problems, but it probably wasn't doing it any favors. fix the jump input latency forgiveness code. If you run off the edge of a ledge before jumping because of display latency, input latency, and or slow reflexes, the character will actually rewind to the last time she was touching the ground within a short period of time so that you can make that jump. I'm constantly dancing on that fine line between a fun challenge and rage quit inducing frustration. Replaced a bunch of boxes with actual art assets in this level. There's a bit of Hob inspiration in here. In an attempt to fix a quality of life issue where I wasn't specifying a direction quickly enough when I fired the grapple, I ended up coming up with this new mechanic where I can actually redirect the grapple in flight, and that ended up being more fun than my fix, so we just went with that. Whew, boy, that was a lot of work. And I'm not just talking about the game development, I mean that was a lot of work. But just putting this video together, look at all these files! And that's just this far, I haven't even finished the thing yet. I'm actually really excited with how things have been coming along in the past couple of months. It's easy to lose sight of the overall picture of things when I've got my nose to the grindstone, but taking the time to sit down and look through all the changes I've committed recently shows me that all the little efforts are starting to add up. I am struggling to get visibility on Fist of the Forgotten though, and I don't have much of a marketing budget. So if you're also excited about this project and want to see it succeed, here's some things you can do. You can add Fist of the Forgotten to your wishlist on Steam. Tell your friends about it, or maybe your favorite streamers. Share this video on forums or wherever you hang out or with somebody who might think it's interesting. If you're feeling really generous, you can throw some bits at me while I'm streaming. Or become a patron, like these awesome people. That way you can get your name on videos like this. And as I mentioned before, I'm trying to make some sort of end credits level or some sort of interactive thing where you can see people that have contributed. And as much as I hate to say it, you can like and subscribe to help me win the favor of the algorithms.